Hello, good afternoon.
Hi.
It's Graham Cofe with My Music, and I am joined by the wonderful Angeline Morrison today. Hello, thanks for joining me
Hi,
all the
Graham.
way
Thanks for
from
inviting me.
your little corner of the room, which is showing some pink. We were just talking about pink, and I was saying you mustn't paint prison walls pink because it incites violence within people. But we both personally love the wonderful pink colour. Before we go any further and talk, we're now going to have a quick word in the form of a video from our sponsor, which involves a lot of pink, you'll be pleased to know.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Well, there we are. Get that message out. Got to support independent music. I did notice, because it's only the second time I've actually watched that video all the way through, did notice that midway through a man threw a guitar into a swimming pool in a fit of anger. So maybe pink wasn't a great colour after all for them. You know.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe don't take it out on the guitars, people.
Yeah, please don't do that because they do actually cost quite a lot of money. Now, let's start there. In terms of musical instruments, yeah, I'm guessing you play a fair few of them. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. I like the variety of being able to make a lot of different sounds, live and in my recordings. So I play alto harp, double bass, mountain dulcimer, guitar, a few other things.
And some of those instruments aren't instruments that you can just go, I know, I'm going to have lessons in that, and it's not the sort of, it's not the sort of thing, is it? An alto harp. Oh, I'll go to school one day and go, please, miss, are there alto harp lessons? So, I mean, where do you go to learn, or do you just teach yourself and sort of like, in this day and age, do you YouTube it, or do you find books that help you learn that, or?
YouTube is a fantastic resource, and really, if you're the kind of person who's just really curious about instruments, which I've always been since I was really little, I would find an instrument and see it as a toy, really, as something to be played with rather than being played. So it took me a while to figure out stuff like technique and all this good stuff that's very useful to have as a musician. But I tend to begin by playing around with an instrument and finding my way through it, which isn't always the conventional way. And then for fine tuning, I will often have lessons on YouTube.
Yeah. So does that then impact the way that you actually write music as well? Because if you're the kind of person that sort of just wants to see what an instrument can do, and sort of what happens if I put my hand there and do this, then you find sounds in a way, don't you? And then does it sort of then lead to like, well, I really like the way that feels with that, or looks with, I know that sounds funny way of saying it, but looks with that kind of feels the right way with that. And then you go, well, actually I'm going to keep that in a song because that sounds good.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I love to find sounds, and that was actually a really good description of at least part of my songwriting process. But yes, I definitely do love that kind of happy accident that happens when you're playing with an instrument and exploring and seeing, I wonder what will happen if I use this combination of notes or whatever. And yeah, quite often, I will get something really good out of that. Maybe the beginning of a verse, or maybe I'll get a middle later, maybe I'll get some sort of a melodic figure that ends up going throughout the song, and defining it in some way. But yeah, I do that process of play is really important, I think, in certainly the way I approach creativity and songwriting.
Now, I do like to ask on this program, I do like to try and find out where it all started for you. So, did you grow up in a musical home? Was there music in the walls growing up?
I grew up in a home where there was lots of singing, and I didn't realise until I was quite a lot older that that's quite unusual. That most people don't just go around singing the whole time, which is something that I do. I don't realise I'm doing.
Doesn't that happen everywhere? Oh right, okay. Because we're in a house where everybody sings.
Brilliant. That's wonderful. I remember when a friend came round to stay the weekend, and he was really shocked because he said I was just standing on your stairs, and there was a different song coming from like 4 different areas of your house, and everybody was singing. And I said,
yeah,
why is that shocking? But my friend had never experienced anything like that. It didn't happen in their family, and it seems that I don't know if this is the norm. Maybe it is the norm. Maybe I've just got the wrong idea about it. But
I honestly believe that it's not. I don't think it is. I think a lot of households, it's been my experience as well, a lot of households, when you go into them, are quite quiet, and you're almost waiting for they look for the excuse to put some noise on. And for me, in a way, that's can be one of the issues in terms of how people absorb music, if you like, is that we now have the ability to just talk to a dot in the corner and suddenly sound comes out of it, but there's no necessary choice in there of actually physically getting something out and going and putting it in. So in a way, it's just although I think we're listening to a lot more music, I wonder how much of it's actually getting listened to, or whether it's just getting heard, if you know what I mean. Did you have a sense of that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And whilst you were talking, I thought I must ask you to define what you mean by music.
Yeah.
How would you define music?
Well, I'll define music as, I think there's a lot of music that people put on that they're not actually intending to interact with in any way. And I guess, over the years, people have probably talked about sort of music, in public spaces like elevators, or if you go into a shopping mall or something, there's something in the background, and it's not necessarily one thing or another. But I think we are making music, even good music, into music by not giving it any kind of time, not actually giving it any kind of listening space, and just filling our spaces or filling our days with it without actually knowing what it is. It's a little bit like sometimes how people read books. I personally can't do it. I don't know about you, but when I read a book, I will know what I've read afterwards. But my wife reads about 40 of these books a month, and and I'll say, well, what happened in that one? Oh, well, kind of this happened and this happened, but it'd be like 2 things from the book, and I was like, is that all that happened in the book? I can't really remember any of the detail. It's like, because I just read it like that to get through it. Whereas maybe it's because I'm geeky, but I just read sort of autobiographies and whatever of people, and by the time I finish, I kind of feel like I've inhabited part of that person's life for the last few weeks. So it has an emotional resonance with me, and and that's what I'm saying. I don't think that all music has a resonance with anybody.
Well, yeah, that's really interesting, because maybe it does, but the resonance depends on the listener and the context. And I just have to say, respect and kudos to your wife. 40 books a month. Because you're like superhuman. That's amazing.
Well, I think she must be, because we have 5 kids and a busy household, and she works full time. So I mean, it's how she
definitely
does it.
Superhuman then, really.
Yeah, she clearly.
Absolute praise and kudos. What was I going to say? Yeah, you raised so many important points there. I was just thinking, I want to talk about loads of these things with you while you're here. But the music thing. So whilst you were explaining your definition of music, which I understand to be, correct me if I'm wrong, the kind of sounds that people will play in their house just so that there's a bit of something covering the silence. and they're not
Yes.
necessarily going to really immerse themselves in that music or in the emotions and the feelings or in the lyrics
Correct.
or in the sounds of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So in that way, it's a little bit like when you go into the supermarket and they pipe that gorgeous fragrance of freshly baked bread and cake at you to make you go to the bread aisle. Is that the kind of thing?
Yeah, it's exactly that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah. So I yeah, I'm with you on that. And also, I feel like as a songwriter, I feel like there's always something for everybody. So there are certain people who are really skilled in writing kind of the kinds of songs which will get, you know, millions and millions of downloads and sales. And they're really good at doing that, and they're very skillful, and they've learned techniques. And there are other songwriters who naturally write this kind of material, and you can tell the difference in the music. If somebody's naturally writes that kind of material rather than kind of using techniques that they've learned, I feel, anyway, this is my personal opinion, there's more of a kind of a soulful energy to that sound. It feels more
Yeah.
authentic. And I don't know if what I'm saying is a bit controversial, but that's my feeling about songs and about music too. So the music that doesn't move me at all, that I can take or leave, that for me is kind of the equivalent of whatever colour the walls are painted. I don't even really notice it. For somebody else, that will be music that really resonates with them on a soul level, that speaks to them in some really meaningful way about their life.
That
You
is
see?
that. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's absolutely true. I think there may be exceptions to the rule. I could probably name some now, but it'd be unfair. But you know, there are some songs where the lyrics were probably, yeah. Well, they probably appeal to a 3-year-old anyway. Now you're a clever lady. I mean, you've got a you've got a PhD. So I mean, in terms of when you're writing, is part of that for you an academic search still as well? No, there's none of it is kind of like I want to, you know, I'm interested in the research aspect of this.
Okay, I love research. I'll never stop being interested in the research. And also in terms of, I'm jumping the gun a bit here because I don't know what you were going to ask me about, but if you were going to ask about the Sorrow songs and the research for that project, that's ongoing. So I wrote the album so that I wrote the album whilst I was still in the process of seeking out what might be traces of the historic Black presence in these islands in the folk songs, and I'm still doing that. You see, I'm still in the process of doing it. So that's never going to end, but it isn't an academic process as such because.
But there's a research
it's from me,
process.
It's from my, it's a research process, but it's from my heart and soul and wanting to honour ancestors, and it's really very far from any kind of academic stuff that I might have done in the past. That I don't.
So, was there any particular reason why you undertook to do that particular album when you undertook to do it?
Yeah, the atmosphere around the murder of George Floyd actually was the catalyst for many things, for huge changes in the kinds of conversations people have, in the kinds of issues that people think about, and a lot of creative work as well. I think was inspired by that. I was inspired to reread The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, which is a classic of African American literature of the 20th century. It was published in the early 1900s, and Du Bois really loved music and uses a lot of musical metaphors in the novel. And chapter 14 is called Of the Sorrow Songs, and it's all about the traditions of folk song amongst the enslaved African populations and their descendants, and how vitally important this body of folk song is for these people, and how it kind of holds a cultural history. It's a place where identity can be sort of reinforced. And also, very importantly, songs can communicate about really unspeakable things, like levels of pain that you can barely even put into words. You can put that into song, and those songs might then communicate that to other people who might
in a way that that words wouldn't necessarily do. And I totally get that. Were you aware that at the same sort of time that you were writing that around the world there were other artists in a way doing a similar thing, trying to capture maybe some history that was lost? I spoke to another artist not that long ago at all on this program who's has had to escape for the time being the Ukraine to come over to Ireland, and she's actually trying to get hold of recordings from old babushkas out there to get original Ukraine folk songs to set them to music. Are you aware that there's kind of I'm not saying a lot of people are doing it, but a global kind of look by artists to try and reconnect with the past, to bring truths out which might make truths stand out now? And would you be interested in sort of meeting with other artists and seeing if there's like a global voice to that as well?
Definitely, and I think that I love the sound of that project about Ukrainian folk songs. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to ask you about that later if you're able to give.
I'm going to connect you with that artist. Absolutely.
Thank you. I would love that so much. But yeah, I am aware about that, and I think also that it's really time for this to happen, because even if I had released this album maybe 3 years ago, there would have been a lot less interest because of what's happened in the world. And I think this is a case where world events are inspiring artists all over the world to do similar things, to reclaim lost histories, because more people are now potentially listening to that and potentially interested in it.
Now, you worked with the wonderful Eliza on this album in terms of production. She's been on here as well, and you know what she's like. She's a lady that speaks her mind. She is amazing. I can't wait to meet her. Like, we've done all this work together, and we haven't met in real life. But you've not met her yet? Well, there you go.
Not yet, but we will do very soon, because I'm supporting Eliza and the Restitution at Celtic Connections on the 30th of January from the Lads Club gig. So I'm so excited about that.
Well, listen, if you're both ever down this way, because this is her kind of second home down here, because we have the Sidmouth Folk Festival, which she's played many a time down here. If you ever find yourself down in Sidmouth, do let us know.
You certainly will. I played Sidmouth last summer, in fact. It was lovely. There
you go. We'll all get together. But yeah, I mean, in terms of getting her involved, what did she kind of bring to the party?
It was really amazing working with Eliza. I couldn't have imagined at all that I would be working with somebody so iconic and brilliant, and who's such a lovely person as well. So when I applied to the Arts Council for some funding, because it's expensive making an album.
Yeah.
Finding time to research it and all of that. So I'd never got funding before in my life from the Arts Council, but amazingly I got it this time. So due thanks to them, and it was brilliant. So in my original application, it was going to be self-released, and I usually do everything DIY. I'm a DIY independent artist normally, and this album was going to be exactly the same. I know how things work. I know kind of what I need to do at what time, and how much things are likely to cost, and so on. So my original application was all kind of based around that, and then during lockdown, I got into, somebody recommended the Clubhouse app, which I'd never heard of. So I was kind of messing around with Clubhouse, and I saw that there are some folk rooms in Clubhouse. And so I started attending these folk rooms on Wednesday.
Oh, we have a guest.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, can I help? Okay, cool. Thank you. She took the bins out.
Excellent. Well done.
This is the kind of show where you get that. Okay.
Is she going to take my bins out too?
It's that professional.
I've got sweets.
I'm sure that would do it. Yeah. You don't get any other kind of music show broadcast in the world where you get people telling you whether the bins have been taken out. Sorry, we interrupted.
I think that's great, keeping it real.
I am.
It's very important to keep it real. Oh, yes, Eliza. So one of the folk rooms is run by Piers Corley, a phenomenal ballad singer. And then the other one that I went to was run by Eliza Carthy. And I thought, well, not go to Eliza Carthy's folk room. It was just lovely, such a really friendly atmosphere, equivalent to what you get when you go to a folk club in real life. You know, they're friendly places, aren't they? So people go there. They're accepting, you know, friendly, warm, generally lovely places. So this was going on in the folk room, and I began to sing. There were kind of sing-arounds, you know, sort of the online equivalent of a folk club, and so everybody would mute and turn and give everyone a chance to sing something. And I every so often I would sing one of my new sort of demo compositions of one of the sorrow songs, and I wanted to know what people thought, you know. And I said, "You must tell me what you really think, because this is really important for the project." And I'll briefly explain what it was about. And everyone was so positive and so warm. And I know that, you know, they were being real. They weren't just saying that. And Eliza was particularly positive and warm, and she was quite moved by the concept. And she actually offered to produce the album. So I wasn't sure I could believe her at first, but she really meant it. And you know, that's not an offer that you can turn down, is it? How amazing is that Eliza Carthy offers to produce her album? So that's how it began. And she brought those phenomenal string arrangements that you hear throughout the record. She plays on it. She also sings backing vocals on some of them. She was responsible for my dream come true of the fact that Martin Carthy appears on the album playing the role of a vicar at the funeral of Evaristo Muchavela, who is a formerly enslaved man who was buried in the same grave as his former master in Wendring in Cornwall. And when I went to visit the grave and pay my respects, I read the inscription in the gravestone, which is a poem which became the opening and closing of the song and the refrain. And it's just a short 4-line poem. Here lie the master and the slave, side by side within one grave. Distinction is lost and caste is all. The slave is now a slave no more. I know. So powerful. I've got to sing it.
So emotional, isn't it?
It's really emotional. But I heard Martin Carthy's voice in my head reciting those words as I read them on the gravestone, and I thought, if only, because I knew that he had an acting background, and I'd heard the Larkrise CD from the show that lots of the folk stars in the 70s did. They brought the book Larkrise to Candleford to the stage, so I knew that Martin Carthy had been an actor and had all these other talents as well. And I just thought, I wonder, but I put it to the back of my mind. I hadn't even met Eliza at that point, so it really was just one of those dreams that you really enjoy, thinking it's never going to happen, and it did.
And Eliza's always been a really big advocate of diversity and inclusion in that respect as well. Yeah. So, I mean, did she say anything to you while you were making the album in terms of why she saw this as so important?
She was just really encouraging about the whole issue all the way through. She believes as strongly as I do in the diversification of folk music and the folk scene, and in the kind of a more real, I guess, reflection of history, including the areas which have been hidden or airbrushed out. Yeah,
and that's so important. That really is so important. Is there a place where you would really love to perform this album, because it would mean a lot?
It's really, this is another there have been many dreams come true for me with this album, and my biggest dream was to perform it at Cecil Sharp House, because that is the absolute sort of beating heart of folk music in England, isn't it? And it's the kind of, everybody recognises and accepts Cecil Sharp House as the sort of official home, if you like, of English folk music. It's the home of the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library, and also Cecil Sharp himself is known to have made some, how can I put this politely, extremely problematic remarks in his personal diaries on the issues of race. So it was that again was another reason why I wanted us to inhabit the building with these songs and with this very culturally diverse band that I put together as well. And so when we were able to book that gig, which was actually the first one that we booked, because Katie Spicer, at the head of EFTAS, was so encouraging and really supportive about the project. And actually I did also receive a bit of funding from them too, and for the research phase, which was really vital. So it was almost like we were bringing the harvest home by performing there. It felt really emotional, and it was amazing because it was almost full. We played in the big space. It was.
I almost feel that Bristol should be a place as well, just because of everything that went on
for
there.
Similar reasons, yeah. Yeah. We did play in Bristol actually. We played at the Wardrobe Theatre in Bristol, but I'm guessing the building that was formerly known as Colston Hall. I'm sorry, I can't remember what it's called now. It's very bad of me. Sorry, Bristolians, forgive me. But that would have been the place to play, wouldn't it?
I think it's called
there.
I think it's called the Equal Arts Centre or something now. It has a diverse name now, which is rather nice.
Okay, cool. I like that. But yeah, it'd be really nice to bring the show there.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it just? So where do you go next after this? I mean, you said this is an ongoing, continuous project, and you hearing some of your earlier work, you've got several voices. You're not just a folk singer. You've got several voices in there. So
yeah,
where do you go next in terms of creation? Do you stick down the folk line, or do you try and expand the folk line? A little bit like people like the Unthanks, for example, who are perhaps trying to bring in other sounds to play within the sort of folk arena.
I love the Unthanks. I've always been I've been a folk singer, and I've been a lover of folk music since childhood. So that's really one of my earliest, along with soul and Jamaican music. That's one of my earliest kind of musical blueprints, and I will always be loyal to that. The next album that I'm going to record is going to be in the kind of, in my usual sort of dark folk, psych folk, weird with a Y folk, ontological kind of style, which the Sorrow Songs is a departure from. I specifically wanted the sound of that album to be much less niche, because I wanted people to hear the songs, and I really want people to sing them. And that's another area where Eliza really helped in terms of the production and the conversations that we had around that, and some new ideas that she had, because it was just really, really important for me that that album had as wide a reach as possible in terms of listeners. And I would love for people to sing those songs and remember those characters, because it seems to me that in all cultures all over the world, the people that you remember, they have songs about them. Like even people like Dick Turpin, who apparently wasn't a hero, he's kind of an anti-hero and not a very nice person, but we've got songs about him, and we remember him. Think of how very many petty criminals there were on the highways, and that's the one we remember by name, because there's these songs about him. So I would love it if these black ancestors who lived in the UK could be remembered through my songs. And also, it was in terms of the sound of the album as well. It was very important for me to do what, as far as I'm aware, hasn't been done, at least in terms of an album-length piece of work in English folk or UK folk, and that's to make work about the historic Black presence that relies on the kind of sonic template of sort of the English folk traditions, very broadly. And the point that I'm making with that is that we belong here.
Yeah.
I deliberately didn't want to bring in any kind of, African sounds or the kind of those kinds of things, because I specifically wanted to make the point, no, we belong here historically, and actually everybody has come here from somewhere. Everyone who's here.
It's quite interesting. Yeah, it's quite interesting how many musicians are of caliber are entering into sort of like the cultural space, and by that I mean, the music's always been involved in culture, but are entering into sort of the maybe sort of grant based or council based funded art space, where they're investigating culture and bringing back something that might have been lost with that. I spoke to Aziz Ibrahim, who was briefly with the Stone Roses as a guitarist.
I spoke to Aziz too. I wanted him on the album, but he wasn't available.
Okay,
but we had a lovely chat though.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, isn't he? I mean, he's
so
done
nice. Really like
he's done a few events with me, and but he's doing some stuff up in Lancashire, isn't he? With like some of the mills and looking at that, and even like trying to preserve, if you like, spaces which will get lost, and and that's why I suppose when I said academic, I suppose to some extent you are involved in providing what could be academic material in a way for the future generations.
Yeah. I wonder what you mean by. Do you mean specifically for use by sort of people who work in universities? Is that what you mean by academic?
Or yeah, for people that need to like understand the culture of a specific time, or understand where what lives were really like, for people at these specific times. I think actually these pieces of music act as much as a historic document as they do or a reference point as they do a wonderful piece of art. I think that's fair to say.
Thank you very much. I hope so. I hope you do.
Yeah. So that's lovely. Now listen, slightly to one side, but I have to ask it because you've done it, and I just imagine it must be the most surreal experience ever. But what was it like doing Jools Holland? I mean, is it as surreal as it looks?
Well, I mean, it's really difficult to describe because it's every musician's dream come true, isn't it? It's just, it's up there, and I certainly never, for a moment, had any reason to think it was going to be anything more than a dream in my life. So I was kind of going around, the way.
Do you spend the rest of the time whilst you're there, and when you're not performing, just listening to everybody else in the room and looking at everybody? No. Okay.
We were isolated. Well, so we were isolated.
Are you?
That sounds all wrong. We had a really nice kind of communal area for all musicians, and then each musician or band had their own dressing room. So I had a dressing room with my name on it, and it said my name, and then later with Jools Holland saying it. Obviously, that's on the wall at home now. And I had a lovely dressing room, and I hung up my choice of frocks, and I was thinking about that all day. And there were these two absolutely gorgeous women. One who did my makeup and hair, and I tried to do my own makeup, and then I ran in and said, "Please fix my face for the cameras," and she did. And then another lovely lady who steamed and ironed my dress, and I met all the other musicians, and it was a fantastic atmosphere. It was just real, we were kind of like colleagues in the office kind of canteen.
Yeah.
That was sort of what it was like. But we'd go down individually for like lighting checks, sound checks, and those kinds of things throughout the day. So you don't hear the others until recording happens. So I arrived in the morning, and the recording happened at about 8 o'clock, and there was a live audience as well. So it was really, really, really exciting. So exciting. And when I watch the footage back, it's on YouTube, and when I watch it back, I can see my hands shaking. I probably shouldn't have said that, because some of my friends, I told them, and they said, "Oh yeah, I couldn't see your hands shaking. It's fine," but totally. I was.
You know it's shaking.
Yeah,
you felt it.
You just know.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful. It was one of the most amazing experiences I've had, in a real high point in my life. Actually, it was lovely, and I met Jools Holland himself, and he was so welcoming and generous and kind, and he called me over by name, and I kind of did a bit of a double take, thinking, Jools Holland knows my name, and he told me that he loved the album. So it couldn't have been a lovelier day, really.
And when he says that, you know that he genuinely means it, and he's actually listened to it as well, right?
Yeah, and what an amazing compliment.
Yeah. What's there apart from Jools, because that's a given, right? Because who wouldn't want Jools to play on their album? But apart from that, was there anyone else there on the day that you thought, okay, I'd love to do something with this person?
Oh wow, so many.
All of them.
It was a great episode, though, wasn't it? Everybody thought it was brilliant. It was a fantastic episode. And actually, I hadn't heard the work of Ray before, the beautiful soul singer, an amazing guy. So it was wonderful to get an introduction to Ray's music. And I had a little chat about collecting with Paul Heaton on the stairs. So it was just lovely. It was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. And then I went back to my sister and brother-in-law's house and drank champagne.
Oh, it sounds
like
it was
just lush. It was so lush.
Had the most amazing day, and then you woke up the next morning, went downstairs, made a cup of tea, and went, "Did that happen?"
That's not so far from the truth. No, I'm still buzzing. Actually, I'm still buzzing now, reading when I think about it.
Yeah. So 2023, will we see new music from you in 2023, or do we have to wait a little while for that to realise?
Well, I'm definitely recording some new music this year, because I've had it in my head for quite a while, and it's starting to hurt now. It needs to come out. Whether it will be released this year, I don't know yet.
You can't
so watch this space. You can't fight it, can you? It's very important not to dam up the creativity.
Yeah.
It's your sore head.
Do you ever? I have to ask. Do you ever suffer from not being able to write, or is it?
Doesn't everybody suffer from that?
Well,
I think that's normal. I accept it.
I think so. It's that's the problem, isn't it? Writer's block is a problem when you're stuck because you can't write on a given day. But some people have given some great advice on that over the years. Like Tom York always says that he paints, for example. If he can't write, he'll take up a paintbrush and paint, which I think that's sensible. Do something else that artistic that just leads you forward, but doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing that thing that you've got stuck on.
I like that, and then it just pours a sort of a healing balm over all the creative cogs and wheels, doesn't it? That got stuck.
Well, I do this sort of thing. I write as well for people all day long, and for me, if I kind of people go, well, how do you think of ideas all of the time? And you just go, well, you're living, aren't you? And for me, I think that's what it's about, isn't it? Maybe sometimes if in the process you get stuck for a minute, that the thing to do is just remember that you're actually alive, and that life is the inspiration. So you just need to go out the door and do something, and then the inspiration will hit you, because supermarkets are a great place. I don't know whether you found that, but you just got to inhabit a supermarket, which is like a surreal little world in itself, or service stations, either of those two, for 5 minutes, and I'm completely inspired again.
Fantastic. And also buses or trains.
Buses
and
trains.
Here on buses or trains.
Yeah, the stuff that people make up. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe
I
there's a
love
great.
that. Life itself is the inspiration. I think you should. There's room in this for you to have a YouTube channel or a TikTok or something, and to be like the inspiration guru.
Do you think so?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I should be inspired to do that within the new year. I don't know. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. It's been an absolute honour for me.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for coming along. Thank you for being so gracious when my little assistant came to tell me about the bins. How
I love your
lovely
little assistant. It's so sweet.
how lovely of her to have done that as well, because it's actually quite muddy outside, and she's obviously got donned coat and boots to do all of that, which is
And
wonderful.
also, taking out the bins is really my least favourite job. So I'm very impressed.
I you know, in
She
this
deserves
house,
a reward.
we're a big house. Did you grow up in a big house?
Not really.
You said there was singing in the house. You said
Yeah.
There are a full complement of 7 people in this house, which,
Wow.
yeah, you know, so it's
That
like
must be fun.
it's almost an octave, isn't it? And you know, and therefore, you know, it can be quite noisy at times. It can be good, but you know, it's a team. That's the thing, isn't it? When you've got a good family, you've got a team, and you work together to make everything happen. Angeline, it's been, as I say, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been good to hear a bit about your music today. No doubt we will speak again in the future. I'd love that. Next time
I would really love that.
got some new music. Let's get you on again to talk about it. And don't forget, if you're in the Southwest, do let me know. I must come along and see you. And
I live in the Southwest too.
Sorry?
I live in the Southwest. So
Oh, where do you live? I didn't even know that. This is the joy of the interweb, isn't it? Is that everybody connects to each other via these little hubs, and nobody actually understands where anybody lives. So where is it you live without giving the game away?
I live in Cornwall.
You live in Cornwall.
Yeah, I do.
That's a lovely part of the country.
I love
And
it.
this is the part of the country that everyone goes through in order to get to Cornwall. So whenever they say where's Chard, and people go, oh, that's on the way to Cornwall. It literally is, because it's on like a main road from London through to Cornwall, and so people kind of just stop off here but they never stay. That's a shame.
Service station.
Oh well, yeah, and that. Angeline, it's been a pleasure. Until next time, this has been Graham Cave with another My Music. Thank you for watching, everyone.